Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of Lean In, Leander. I'm your host, Andrew Naudine, and for those of you who have joined me on this journey so far, I hope you're enjoying what it is that I'm putting out. I definitely want to be able to help people understand some of the movers and shakers, if you will, in the city, as well as locations of certain notable businesses and things of that nature. We'll continue to expand on what we do as far as the scope of conversation, but for the time being, still focusing in on a few people that I know who have some influence in the city, who help establish what direction the city is taking, and I hope you enjoy meeting them if you've never met them before, as well as maybe getting a little bit of insight on some of their thoughts while we continue our conversational series here. So today I'm going to spend some time with a gentleman who was somewhat instrumental in bringing me to the city of Leander. We'll be speaking with Chris Czernek, who sold me my house, and talk a little bit about how he views the growth and the progress moving forward in the city of Leander, touch a little bit on his professional expertise, if you will, as well as his role on the city council. And I have a little bit of a curveball I'm going to throw at Chris today, so we'll see how easily he embarrasses, if he does at all, and we'll see how that particular line of questioning goes. Believe me, it's nothing super serious. It's just something that I don't know a whole lot of people know about Chris, and something that I found fascinating. And it's actually a connection that we were able to uncover between my family and Chris. So it's interesting. I think it's a good story. I hope you'll enjoy it. We're going to head over to Chris's place here in a minute, so come join us and we'll have a chat. So today I'm here with Chris Czernek.
That's right.
And we're going to talk a little bit about how Chris got to the great city of Leander, what he does as a professional, kind of tell you a little bit about our relationship.
All right.
And we'll touch a little bit about his involvement with the Leander City Council. So Chris has been gracious enough to actually give me 2 interviews. We did this last Tuesday, and unfortunately there was some technical issues. So we had a great conversation last Tuesday.
I do blame myself, Andrew. I was joking about it, and because I had done a podcast when I was running for office, and it was almost identical, where we had to go through about 40 minutes of retakes, right, and something wasn't recording, and then all of a sudden, we got this last one. So hoping that I can make up for it here for you.
Yeah, we're going to officially call it the Czernek Jinx for all future reference.
Yeah,
okay?
That sounds good.
So you
take all the credit.
You're actually part of the Lean In Leander lore now.
That's
so
it.
There you go. Anyway, so nice alliteration there.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I did with Chris last time, and it was really, hopefully we can hit the same, and we will, because I think we're well acquainted. But last time I kind of threw him a curveball, so to speak. And we started with a little bit of history from Chris. I'm going to repeat the same thing here today. For those of you who didn't know, Chris was a college quarterback. And he actually, this is how we kind of became friendly, more than just a professional relationship. But we discovered during the house buying process, Chris actually helped me buy my house, sold me my house, I guess, technically, right?
There we go.
During the process, he made an offhand comment, I think it was, about, we mentioned something about college. Oh yeah, I was a quarterback in college and whatnot. And it came up that Chris actually went to California Lutheran University.
Right.
Ironically, my son was attending California Lutheran University at the time. So we just thought, wow, this is crazy, kind of like, fate. We wouldn't have met any other way. What are the odds? But for Chris, what's interesting to know is that he was actually a very, very good quarterback. He's number 2 on the all-time quarterback list there at Cal Lu between 1999 and 2001. He passed for 7,162 yards.
All right.
And I don't know if you remember each and every one of them, but he's also number 4 on the all-time TD list. He has 46 touchdowns during the time he was actually at California Lutheran.
Awesome.
I like to throw that out there. And, you know, for a lot of the people here in Leander who maybe know Chris from his efforts here in the city, probably don't recognize. I know there's folks out there that got something against California, you know, but hey, I love Cali. Chris is from Cali. It just goes to show you don't judge a book by the cover.
There we go. Yeah, so. It's not the first thing I lead out there with whenever you're saying something, just because of the persona. But I'm hoping that we're breaking the mold as far as showing. I don't know, maybe something different than what they expected.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, again, you know, California is just a place to live, and they happen, in my opinion, to run the state just a little bit differently than we do down here. And that's all. You know, that's it. You stay there if you like it, you leave if you don't.
Correct.
Pretty simple.
Amen.
So yeah, no, a lot of people make way much more out of that than what they necessarily need to. So, but we're not going to go there. So last time we met, we talked a little bit about the housing market in general, because Chris works for what is it now?
Coventry Homes.
Coventry Homes. It was Wilshire when I was here.
Yeah, so same parent company.
Right?
It's McGuire Home Builders. They own several. DBAs are doing business as Coventry Homes. Wilshire Homes or Plantation Homes in the Austin market is how you would see us out here. And with everything that's been going on in the last, I don't know, since COVID hit and everything, and everybody's been going online for just about everything, we decided as a company that it would be best to have one brand.
Right.
So rather than going 3 different websites and complicating the communication process and what's standard over here, what are these this floor plan is a number over here and it's got a name over here, we just decided to simplify it. We got one name. Coventry was the best name across the whole state. As far as everything goes, the most all-inclusive. Wilshire was a very good name for this region, but if you were in Houston and if you were in Dallas, Fort Worth, and even parts of San Antonio, you wouldn't know what Wilshire Homes was. Right. So as a whole, Coventry Homes, and that was our more elite product here anyway, so we just went with Coventry Homes, and but it is a crazy market, like you were saying. Yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting watching the rebrand out here in, I live in the Caneros Ranch area, which is West Leander. Yep. So out here, when we first got here, and I've talked about this before, we went through a process where we kind of kept expanding the loop around Austin, because, you know, it was nice to be able to move to Austin. And then when we came out here, I remember very distinctly, I think it was the other home builder who was here. I walked into their offices, and they had a map up, and it showed the train. And I was like, oh, there's a train out here. Like, oh yeah, it's right down the road. So for us, actually, that was one of the selling points, is that it was so close to transport that could get us into Austin should we find ourselves both employed down in that area. It's not how it worked out. I ended up working from home as usual, and so I haven't really left Leander since. But it's nice to be able to jump on the train, run down to Austin. I think we went to ACL one time, and we did that, and we actually met some of our neighbors that way. Because we both we both ended up on the train, and we're like, hey, you live down the street from me. So anyway, what we talked about the last time was how the pandemic has affected the marketplace out here. So, you know, where I live, I've watched as home after home after home after home gets built. I mean, and this has been a process that I used to have a view out of my office window of, prairie, essentially, with a bunch of cedar trees, and it was beautiful. Now it's a red brick wall for my neighbor. So, I knew it was going to go away. But what was interesting is what you told me last time. So if we can kind of maybe touch on that again. Yeah, so really the pandemic has done different things in different regions. And as far as this market's concerned, everybody knows about Austin is everybody's moving here, and home prices are going up. A lot of people think that it's just because, it's so popular that we're just raising our prices. Not true. What's going on is, first, how do people get here? During pandemic, there's a lot of different states handle things different ways. And some states decided to shut down businesses. Some states decided to, they were more concerned about whatever infection rates were. And I won't go into those specific things because I'm not the expert there. But what it did was it made a lot of people and a lot of businesses decide that they don't want their home to be in other areas anymore, and they picked Texas, and specifically Austin, Texas, to be a hub for where they want to do business and they want to invest in. And so really, if you think about the state that we were just talking about us both coming from, the San Jose Valley and that Silicon Valley has been has really been the tech capital of everywhere. And they're nicknaming Austin, I think, Silicon Hills now or something like that. And what's happening here is a lot of tech companies and other businesses have been coming here. So what happens when you have these companies come here and they take all their employees with them, there's a lot of people that need places to live, right? And we do not have nearly the amount of places necessary for those people to live. Also what's happening in the shutdown is that most of our lumber specifically comes from that Pacific Northwest region, right? Some of the first states to shut down and keep things going there. So production just stopped on some materials. Sometimes it's, dishwashers and things, and it's coming from overseas or different parts of the country. And maybe it's AC condensers, but it's specifically with lumber, like in September, we had a double. So the price of lumber, the price to do, to frame a house doubled in September, right? Because mills stopped producing the wood. We still needed to have actually even more homes being built. Right. You might not see this in some other town that doesn't have the growth that we have, because they might still be able to keep up with their small production. Right. But when you have tons of demand and you don't have the materials to build the homes, what's happening now is the prices are going through the roof. And I think now people are starting to see that on the home price market. And what we're seeing, and like a situation like this, I have a list of, it's a home for 100 people long, and I can only write 3 contracts a month to be able to because that's how many homes we can build and feel comfortable about. And so every month there's price increases, and I'm only going to be able to help some of these people on the list. This is unheard of. Right. And so there's a lot of people, there's a huge demand. Prices are going up. This is the place to be. And I'm like, if you don't own a home and you're trying to get a place, I don't even care what it looks like right now. You just need to buy it. Yeah. That's been the advice. If I was a realtor instead of a sales counselor working for a builder, I would just be coaching my clients up to say, whatever it is, we just need to get it right now. And unfortunately, people coming from other states have a different perception of reality of what something should cost, and this is nothing for them for what they're coming from, and I know what they're coming from.
Right. No, I'm all that said, I'm glad I bought my house when I did.
Right. Good timing.
My timing was actually very good, it turns out. It was super interesting when we started talking about that the other day, because I didn't realize all of those I hadn't really put those two together.
Right.
Like the fact that the shutdowns caused shortages in raw materials, and that eventually that raw materials are not available to us. So you have to, prices increase, or you're sourcing from somewhere else, maybe. And the nice thing about that, I think, would be is that with a company like yours, I would imagine that you guys are like, okay, no, we have a certain level of quality that we want to have for our homes.
Exactly.
So we're not going to source from the secondary market or this other place. We're going to continue to buy where we are, and we'll pay the price. Unfortunately, the price gets passed on to the consumer.
Every time. And also in talking about quality, it's an experience too. We don't want to just sell. There are other builders right now that they're just now setting a cap. We've been doing this for months, but they're just now setting a cap on what they're willing to build. So I believe what they're going to get into a situation is, let's say you were buying a home, okay, and we go under contract this month, okay, and you have your price set, okay, you're going to add some things to the house, but your base price is set right now, and I'm under contract to honor that price. Well, if I'm the builder, my price is not guaranteed right now. Some of these POs, the suppliers are guaranteeing prices for like 60 days, and so what's happening is my price is going up while your price is staying there. So my margins just shrunk, right? So what we're saying is, one, we're not willing to risk, selling 10 homes and risk that margin over 10 homes. We're willing to do it on 3. And with the materials that are going to be available to us, we don't think it's responsible to sell homes to more than 3 or 4 people a month, because we don't believe we'll be able to come through and build that home.
Right.
And you to have a decent experience, or as decent as it can be in this market.
Right.
So we're really just, we've been a conservative company since the beginning. I don't think it's changed.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's good to know. And I mean, for me as a home buyer, not a builder, I don't build. Except for like Legos. But,
there you go.
But anyway, no, as a home buyer, it's nice to hear that, even after the fact. I mean, I'm already bought, I'm already committed, I've already made my investment.
Sure.
But it's good to know that the company that I worked with continues to honor this, this valuation of responsibility in the marketplace. So I know very comfortably that as the Coventry Homes continue to be built in my neighborhood, and I think we've got, 2 more phases?
Yeah, so there'll be about 130 plus more homes that you're not seeing. Like, so for instance, that empty section back there, I have 8 of those lots sold, but you won't see sold signs on them, because the second I put sold signs up on them, I'm going to have 10,000 people running through this model home saying, look at all these lots, they got availability, and I just don't. So that's if that's not a sign for something, a salesperson that doesn't want to put a sold sign on the lot because it might bring too many more people. I mean, that isn't that ridiculous?
No, that is ridiculous, but it's prudent.
Right.
It's prudent. And my dog Rousey appreciates it because she's got those big lots to romp through.
Anytime. If you think about it, so what was the dog's name? Rousey? Rousey. So Rousey now will have empty lots longer, because if we're only selling this many lots, they're just extending my time. And I only live about 5 minutes from here. So for me, my blessing in all this is, I guess, I get to work closer to my family for longer. So they're just prolonging my short drive to work.
Yeah, and there's benefits. I mean, there are benefits. For me personally, I work from home. I'm an independent contractor of sorts. I'm in sales too, so I get all the stuff that we're talking about. But I've been in, it's always hard for me to understand, not understand that, but necessarily relate directly. Sure. Because I've been remote since like 7 years now. Sure. So for me, the pandemic was not even a change. It was just the same. What changed for me is now my wife is there. Right. My son came back from California. I was like, okay, that's what changed. Yes. I have no privacy anymore. Right. Yeah.
Your big corner office went to a cubicle.
Yes, my corner office went to a cubicle. Exactly. Yeah. So, okay, so great. So, and again, because we're trying to keep this, I'm trying to keep this for those of you who are watching. The last time we talked was great. I mean, it was such a good conversation. Right. Yeah. So we're trying hard to replicate that here. I know we're both conscious of it, so we're just kind of put that aside.
We'll see if we get onto some good tangents like we did.
Yeah, we did. We got some really good tangents the other time. It was really good stuff. Yeah. But so let's kind of turn the focus now. Okay, you've lived in Leander for a while. You've worked in Leander for a while, and then suddenly, something in your life prompted you to make a large, what I call a large civic commitment. Okay. And you ran for council. Sure. So tell me a little bit about that process, what got you there, and what that has meant to you.
Sure. So I guess so I didn't always live in Leander. I worked up here, but I didn't live in Leander, right? Okay. And there was probably 4 years where I was commuting from either the other side of Round Rock or Cedar Park to come up here. In that time, I fell in love with the area, really. We wanted to be part of a community. It wasn't the right fit, I guess, in where we were at. But then we opened up another community there, and we thought this was finally going to be our chance for me and my family. We had 2 young girls at the time, to make a move there, and we loved the feel overall. So I fell in love with the people, right? So that's what helped me come here. Now, after being here and then living in the home for almost 4 years, 5 years or so, I had been selling homes here for now it's over 9 years. Okay, and in that time, I have been telling people a whole bunch of things about this coming, and this is all the things, and they just weren't coming. So it got me thinking, right? And we talked about this before too, and we didn't go deep into it, and I won't go deep into it now, but I just was able to share my faith with you a couple different times, and why I did some things. And so I went in a couple years ago and being a little bit concerned about the city in general, as far as we're growing so fast, and maybe some things were getting overlooked, and maybe if we're going the right way or the wrong way. But I also came into the year and I just thought, this is an opportunity for me to just focus on my relationship with my Father in heaven, is what it was. And so I went in fasting and praying to a year, and I was asking for some specific things, and I got out of nowhere, somebody reached out and just said, hey, if I have a group of people that might support you, would you ever consider running for city council? And I'm going like, oh, this is funny. This is not what I asked for. This is exactly not what I asked for. And then over the rest of the couple days, because I didn't want to break my fast, I wanted to still continue to just hear. And it was confirmed. And I'm going, oh my goodness. Okay, so let's just go see what this is about. And still to this day, I still don't know what I'm doing, right? Which is probably the best thing, because I've come in there with just, no preconceived notions, just trying to always do the right thing. But really, it's my commitment to make this place better. I really care about the city. I was in a situation where I probably would have either been I was either going to be putting a for sale sign in my yard at some point, or I guess you always say throwing your hat in the ring or whatever, getting involved. And you said a civic duty or civic responsibility. I feel like we all have this responsibility.
Sure.
We should all do these things. It's an unpaid position. We get a lot of, if anything, it's a lot of hours. And it's worth every single penny to know that I can plant my flag in this city, and that my family and other people's families are going to benefit from good people going and trying to help with no ulterior motives.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to kind of point out, and because I know sometimes when you get into, the political conversations, so to speak, I know from my own personal experience that when I first moved to Leander, my wife and I used to joke about this.
Sure.
And because I call it polittering, because when I first drove down Lakeline, there was a ton of signs at that particular time. I don't remember which election it was, but there was a bajillion signs.
I'll have to start. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, what's this all about? So I kind of started looking into it and thinking about it.
That's good.
My wife did a Google search, I think.
Sure.
And, salary of Leander, city council or something along those lines. So she thought it was a paid position and all that. And I was like, I don't know. Let me let me do a little bit of work here. And again, as you mentioned,
thank goodness it's not.
It's an unpaid position.
Well,
goodness. I think that's something that from my perspective, and with all due respect, I mean, absolutely, what you do with the time that you spend on council, it's a tremendous commitment of time.
Sure.
And you have a young family.
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking time. You're literally taking time away from your family to fulfill that commitment, or to fill that calling, if you will, in your case. But for me, I look at that and I'm like, okay, you got people who have full-time jobs, who are otherwise occupied. They've got a boss. They've got someone that they've got to answer to, and then to turn around and do council and all that. My inclination would say, a city that maybe not now, but a city that we know is going to grow to 150, 180,000 people. You need a full-time council. You need people who are, for lack of better terms, paid to do the job. I mean, there's a lot of cities do it that way. I think it'd be an interesting thing to watch how that happens over the next few years, because that is something that personally, I mean, again, it's because of the commitment of time. Because in my opinion, and again, not you specifically, and not anyone on council specifically, but I would find it very difficult that if I had a full-time job to carve out time to put my attention to particular matters that are of import to the city, and be able to be really, really versed on them. So we talked about this the last time.
I think I gave you an answer too.
You mentioned, the paid city employees, the city manager, the city secretaries, and things of that nature. And we talked a little bit about that. So tell me what that looks like from your perspective and your interaction with them.
Sure. So for me, I guess one of the things I had told you last time, which I stand behind it, which is I'm glad that I'm not paid, even though it may be necessary for somebody. I would like to be the guy who, if that was necessary, that on his way out made it possible for future people to get paid and not myself, because I think it would be extremely controversial if in the middle of, regardless of the amount of time, I stepped into this knowing I'm not paid. I stepped into this to serve, and that's it, right? And that's my conviction. And if it becomes something else for somebody else, that's fine. But that's my conviction. And I knew what I was getting into there. I would like to set it up for somebody else to maybe have that opportunity later, because I do think that there's enough hours going in that that probably a stipend or something like that is necessary to offset whatever you're away from business or away from your family. With me, I couldn't do this unless my family was 100% behind me, and it was me and my wife praying together on those situations and getting confirmation. She got the confirmation; it had to come from her. So, in our children, we try to involve them in everything we do for the city. You'll see them down there at the council chambers, not as much during the COVID situation, but before that, before we went into some of those scenarios. It really is. I believe that one thing that I would really like to help this city do. You have these paid positions, right? We have a city manager. The city manager is in charge of their staff. I really believe it's their responsibility to do all those things. It's our city manager right now, Rick Beverlin. He's been there for a year and a half, something around those lines-ish, right? And what a heck of a year to have to come in and learn a new job. But there we go, and we're still growing and still doing all this stuff. And I think there's a great job doing. A great job is being done there. But it's really his responsibility to really prep us for what we need to know as far as these situations go. It's his staff's responsibility. It's my job as a council member to not go overwork those situations and to get the information I need and to make sure policy-wise, procedure-wise, legislatively, they have what they need to run the city. Their job to run the city, my job to run the policy. We're the board of directors, and my job to hold the city manager accountable. That's my job. Anything else besides that, I really believe is not my job. And so I think that's also helped me a little bit. Because I think sometimes in city government, especially especially in smaller towns that are growing as fast as we are, I think we take on other things more than we need to because there's a gap maybe with city staff, or maybe there's something we're passionate about, or like my background, if I wanted to go in, I know I don't do this all the time, Robin, but let's say I want to go in all the time to because I work in the development world, and I wanted to have more say and give more input. It's my position is not to do that. My position and what I was elected to do was to hire the right city manager, hold the right city manager accountable, and to be able to provide the necessary legislative rules, policies, all that stuff to be able to make sure they can do their job and keep us safe and grow in the right way responsibly. Right? That's my job. And so I think that there may be other people's opinions as far as that goes, but that's what I read, in our city charter, in our job description, or whatever you want, our volunteer description. That's what I read, and I'm really serious about that.
Yeah, no, I think it shows, and I definitely laud you on that approach. I think for a lot of people, there's a difference of perception and reality when it comes to hyper-localized governance.
Okay.
In my opinion, and this is just me, but when I look at that, there's a lot of people who will see. Maybe we can leave it as simple as like the nightly news, and you see what's going on a national level, and you know that these people, you read about how much a senator makes and that they get benefits for life and all this stuff.
Sure.
And so I think that there's a tendency in people's minds to view it from that lens.
Right.
But when you get down to, again, like Leander, it's different, and I really like the way that you describe it. As a board of directors, as opposed to a city council. I think that's that's a good thing to be able to kind of click onto and say, okay, wait a second, these guys are more like a board of directors. Yeah. They're advising, they're directing, they are trying to set policy and things of that nature that help the city move in the direction that it needs to move, as opposed to actively legislating, actively making rules and decisions that would impact that directly. It's more of an indirect guidance. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think we're absolutely making policies and legislating, right? We're absolutely doing those things, but I think of how those things come to be and whose ideas they are or how they came to be. Like if you really wanted to do the flow chart, if you look at our flow chart, I remember talking about this in the city of Leander. When we were running for office, but it says that there's the board of directors, which was us, city council. It says city manager, and then it says all the staff directors and everybody else who's under, and each position that goes under. So it's a big flow chart, organizational chart, right? Okay, but above that board of directors, which is us as city council, it says citizens of Leander.
Right.
That's who we're accountable to. And the way you hold us accountable is, voting and, if you don't like something, making your voice heard, which people do all the time. And I know that's part of our job too. That's part of our job too, to be able to listen and to be able to not be stuck in one place or another, but be able to balance people's emotions and really just be able to, I guess we're just it should be a calming presence, right? But the citizens of Leander really are on the top of that flow chart, right? Yeah. And so that's who we're listening to, and they should be helping to dictate what kind of policies are going forward. And also our city manager needs, as far as how the city runs, if Chief Minton or Chief Wusterhausen said it right, and if anybody or Mr. Powers in our finance department, or Robin in the planning, if something needs to change, they need to bring it to our attention. Hey, we have a problem here. We have something going on here, and we need this to be this, and here's why. That's a lot of the reason why you see a lot of why our agendas are so long. There's a lot of developments coming, and there's a lot of things that have to change with all the different stuff and how fast we're growing. And so those should be the two different reasons. And it's not a whole bunch of just, I'm Chris, this has been my experience, so I believe everybody else should experience the same thing that I experience, blah, so here's your policy. Never should that happen, right? There should always be something, and we're just here to kind of facilitate. We're the conduit between citizens of Leander and the city staff. That's really.
And it brings up a good point. Civic duty, and I'm not an old fogey from way back in Muskogee or anything like that.
From Muskogee.
I'm not. But civic duty is something that personally for me, I'm kind of a nerdy kid anyway. But when I remember growing up.
You got a lot of gray in that beard for a kid.
Yeah, well,
I'm catching.
It's what is it? Anyway,
it's wisdom.
It's wisdom. There you go. Yeah. But with that said, the fact of the matter is that you have to be involved. Right. As a citizen, you have to be involved. And I know a lot of people will put it in such a way that they'll say, well, if you didn't vote, you can't say anything. That's not true. If you choose not to vote, that's your personal choice. But you can always say something, right. and you should always say something. And my opinion is that and one of the efforts that this whole production is about is to try to open up those channels.
Sure.
Because I've sat on a couple of different committees in the city, and one of the things that we in the Citizens Advisory Committee, we talk about this all the time, is that there's a lack of communication, or at least a perceived lack of communication. Sure. Okay? So I'm not going to point fingers at anybody and say, hey, you're not doing your job, or you're not doing this right, or this could be fixed, or that could be fixed. Sure, we can sit in these committee meetings and have those types of conversations and try to come up with solutions. But at the end of the day, to me, it's like, well, you know what? You can complain about it, but if you come out and actually say, hey, you know what can we do to fix that? How can we help? And this is another thing that we kind of talked about the last time, is that, committees in the city are people who are giving they're volunteering. Absolutely. Just like you are, and they're giving of their time. And I'd love to be able to find a mechanism, and we've talked about this a little bit in our committee, but find a way to kind of bring about a more unified communication of what's going on, and be able for people to understand, without a whole lot of deep thought or research or digging, but just have a general understanding of okay, they're working on this. The Citizens Advisory Committee is working on this thing with the city, and the Arts Department is the Arts Committee is working on with the Parks Department on that thing, and have a better understanding of what the big picture looks like, which I think gets lost sometimes.
Probably can, and I think I remember where this went last time too, is change is hard. Right?
Sure.
Change is hard, and so I think, and so when you have turnovers of council, and you have turnovers of even staff members, but in boards or in different groups that are tasked with advising the mayor or council, or directing art projects and how that would be implemented throughout our city. There's just been some changes, and I think we're getting to a point where I think those things people are really starting to communicate well, and it's coming. And I think I was wanting to give you hope last time, right? I wanted to give you hope that, like, I really believe those things.
What we said the last time, it was.
But
really,
I remember, like, oh,
it was good. I was like, yes, there's hope.
I really believe that we are going through. There is a breakthrough coming. There is a breakthrough coming, and it may not be perfect because it's really hard to keep up with. But groups are really working well together right now too. And like I said, change is hard, and I think we were in between the change on a couple boards, and even with council and even different city departments. There's change that happened, and with that change, it's like, well, this is the new way to do it, or this is the better way, not just because this is the way we've always done it.
Right.
And I also think another thing is to, like, this forces the change. But when we're talking about, civic duty and all of these things too, is like, look, I'm here for a time, and I don't know what that time is, and my time should not be it shouldn't be infinite, and it shouldn't be overdone. I believe that we should only be here for a certain amount of time, and the city grows, and we give that much time, and then we move on. I think that's even how, like, government in general, our federal government was even started. People very successful.
That was the original idea.
This was the idea, right?
That was
you go do this thing, and then you go, and then you give your time, and you do your best. You try to leave that place better than when you came in, and you go back to your life. And somebody else does it. And there's not all this other stuff. And somewhere we got off track. This is a job. And that's why I told you I don't want any money.
No, I think
because
that makes
I don't
sense.
want.
It's a good way to bring it back around.
I don't want that to be my job.
Right.
And maybe I don't know what God will do with me and how I'll go. And if this will be like the city of Leander will be where I'll be the rest of my life. I hope that's true. But at the end of the day, I've come to my company to make it better. I've been here for 9 years, and I could say 100% since the day I've been here. We went from a construction company that really was tough at dealing with people and communicating with people to a place that I now call home, and I feel like I'm part of the family, and that's the way they treat people. And I think that what we were talking about is the quality, or like how we want our customers to feel, is the same. City of Leander, no different, right? City of Leander, I know that there were some needs. I think a lot of them were just bringing civility back to our council and really bringing a fresh perspective of somebody that doesn't have an agenda as far as something that's trying to go on. I want to try to bring this place together. It's very cliche. Everybody says that, right? But I really believe it's happening here. I really believe we're seeing that actually happen in our small but very fast growing city.
Right.
We got new numbers that say we're even going to be growing faster than we were last year.
Right. Which is, and I think it's a very good point. I think it is a very good point, and I think the factor there that I look at from my perspective as a newly transplanted resident. I'm a Texan. I've grown up in Texas. I was born in El Paso, lived most of my life in Houston, and now I'm here.
Right.
So for me, I'm all about Texas. I understand Texas. I get it.
Sure.
I lived here my entire life. What's happening now, what I see is, okay, you've got 73% growth or something like that. The number was like there. Basically, I think you can boil it down, and I might not be on the mark.
It depends on how many years you're talking.
Yeah, but there's, for every one person that used to live in Leander, there's 3 new people living in Leander, essentially. Yeah,
if you go back like 10, 15 years.
Sure,
right, yeah.
Sure. And when you look at that, so then you're bringing in, and to your point, and I'm really wanting to support your point here, so don't think I'm not. Those 3 new people come in with 3 new ideas.
That's right.
And when those 3 new ideas are here and they decide to take, the action and get involved, then those ideas need to start being listened to as well as the whole. That's the challenge to me. That's how I would look at the position on council or anything else. The challenge is to not have the blinders on, or even you can't have noise canceling headphones on.
Right.
You got to listen to all the different voices and try to find something that's going to be. You're never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
And you're never going to please all the people. And there's always going to be somebody who's not going to like what you're doing. That's
every single thing.
That's everything.
Even the most simple agenda item, somebody's going to be upset about it.
Tell me, in your family, in your family,
where are you going to eat for dinner?
There's at least one of the girls that doesn't like what you're doing, right? Every single time. Every single time.
Unless it has to do with some kind of water park, splash pad.
Okay, but even then maybe you or your wife is not exactly 100% on board with that, right?
Yeah, do we have to? Yeah.
It is the reality. That's how life is. Life is about, building commonality in cause, heading the same direction, at least trying to head the same direction.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be happy about it, but hopefully they're not so unhappy about it that they do things that are disruptive.
Because there's two things there, right? And because here we are in the middle, and I'll just take my position on council, right? You have this really wholesome, family-oriented, rich history, Leander, and you have people that have been here for a long time, people that have owned land here and were the pioneers of what went on here. And they may or may not want some of the things that are going on right now to happen. Some of them are still okay with it. Some of them are not. Some people just moved here in the last 10 years and said, we did this to get away from Austin or somewhere else. And don't Austin my, Leander, and don't California my Texas, and don't my whatever the situations are, right? And then you have the other people that are coming here, regardless if people want them to or not, that have other ideas too. So how do you blend? How do you bring together two different things? And I think it's going to take a really good listening, a ton of patience, and a pure heart in this situation too, where I can hear and I think last time we were talking about this, it was like, it's not, because you talked about maybe a persona or something like that, like as far as like new ideas that are coming to the city. And I think there is a way you can still say no to something, right? And still, or not be in agreement with something, or think shouldn't be done, and still handle it the right way, right?
Sure.
You can still communicate and still hear somebody out, even if it's not something that you're going to do,
right.
And you can still have a really great conversation there. And the way in which you do it, I think, is just as important.
Sure.
As what the actual outcome is, right?
Sure.
And it could be that way about preserving a historical building in the city, to not developing a certain area of town, to honoring a group, to let's say bringing in new ideas as far as bringing people together. There's a whole bunch of things, right? I'm specifically being vague on purpose.
No, and I
as far
understand
as those
that.
go, but they really
it's
are all these
fair.
things.
It's fair. I understand what you're saying, and I think our listeners will too. I think the
Sure.
people who actually sit down and watch this
Right.
will understand what the nuance there is, and I appreciate that, and I respect it.
Thanks.
I don't want to go down, any one specific path, and I wouldn't want to put you in a position that you felt like, okay, I'm in a corner here and I have to say something.
Sure.
That's not the point. The point is to have the conversations, to reach that level of understanding between individuals. In this context, for me especially, that's the point. We're friends, we're acquainted, and so we can have this conversation. But I would hope that other people who maybe are not as closely acquainted could sit down and have the same conversation.
That's the deal.
And find a way to be able, okay, it's like, this is what I'm saying, I know what you're saying, where do we meet? Where do we find that place where we're both okay with what's going on?
Right.
And I mean, we've had that experience.
Sure.
When the new subdivision was being built right next to us, I was a learning situation for me. Because I didn't know how things exactly worked in Leander. And I wasn't 100% crazy about it, to be honest with you. Because I'm driving down Lakeline one day and I see these signs talking about a new development and a P&Z meeting.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
The public notice, the yellow
I'm
ones.
like, okay, yellow sign, I'm going to go to the P&Z meeting. And I did.
Yeah.
And I raised my concerns about the development. And at that point, the P&Z said, you know what, we're going to give it a little bit of time. Hey, developer guy, I'm not going to mention names, but
Sure.
developer guy, go out and talk to the neighbors.
Right.
And so we're a pretty communicative neighborhood out here.
I would say yes.
People talk to each other,
Right.
we know
So
who
was the other one.
Yeah, so were they. And so, when you get that people together, to my point earlier, is that if you speak up, you get heard.
Right.
Okay? It's not like people are not trying to listen to you. The opposite side of that, and what I think kind of happens sometimes, is that there's not a real big effort to listen. Like, if we just don't make a big deal out of this, we'll be able to squeak by, nobody will know we did it, and we'll be done.
Or somebody forced something on me because we don't care.
Right.
And that's the situation, and you don't want that either, right?
Sure, absolutely. So when they opened up the opportunity for us to speak with them, and I think it was unique. I'm not going to say this is universal, but
for that, again, we're not saying the company.
We're not
for
saying
that company, that was unique.
Right.
And that had every bit to do with how I respected that process. Because I built homes. All 3 of my neighborhoods that I've been in 9 years were these 3 neighborhoods that border that property. That everybody I built a home for was right here.
Right.
So if there was one that I was a little bit more passionate about, and I owned a home in here for 5 years, I'm going to pay attention to this one. And it was very unique. But that's what we're trying to foster here. We now have we are asking developers to be doing these things prior to us having to ask them.
Yep.
So they can come to us and say, look, we've already done this. We've already talked about this. These are here's the concerns. Here's the deal. Here's our next one. This is our plan.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
So much better.
I think that's huge. And if that is something that truly, if at this point the council has been able to move that goal line, for lack of better terms, football reference, that's great. Because for me, as a resident, as an investor, that was the issue. The issue was, yeah, you guys have been talking about this for how long, and you're giving me 2 weeks?
Right.
I'm like, that's not enough. That's not fair to me, because I've never had an opportunity to weigh in. Now, good thing is that at the end of the day, there was enough receptiveness on the other side of that conversation, and everybody came to a very, I think, sensible, logical.
People were still not happy that it was happening in the first place.
You were not going to be able to answer every happy question. I'm sorry. And as much as I'm a tree hugger, just like a lot of other people out there, but sometimes you got to say, well, you know what, that doesn't work, and you got to get rid of that tree.
And it's somebody else's property.
Yeah, and it is somebody else's property. Now, I'd love to see if there's anybody out there who actually knows about a way to maybe relocate the trees or move them.
That's hard. Yeah,
it's difficult.
We actually won't. We won't do it. We have people ask us that all the time. Like, we have this really good tree that's here, and we want to move it just to our front yard or our backyard to save it, and we won't even entertain it because there's this perception it's going to make it, and more than likely it won't. There are professional companies that can do those things for like a big enough tree, and it's probably very expensive. And it just depends on what that's going to be. But yeah, that's a.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks.
Right.
Because you come out here and like we're sitting in the community center,
right,
and right outside the window, y'all can't see it, but there's a bunch of old oak out here, and it's beautiful.
Those will stay.
Those stay. And one of the things I was able to help get done in this build was there's a little tree line. And
even though they're cedars,
but they're pretty, and they provide a
buffer.
They provide a natural buffer.
Right.
And I was like, no, and it was right on the plans where nobody was really looking at it. And frankly, if we hadn't said anything, a bulldozer would have come through and probably just knocked them all down.
And it's customary for. So let's use that example, right? It's customary for if a builder comes in and they're going to do a development like that, it is customary for them, even for the city, to require that all those trees go down because of the type of tree that they are. Okay, especially commercial developments, they have to take out all the cedars, right? And so here's a situation where because it'll cost them more money to take them out, so the builder's probably fine with leaving them in, and the neighbors, somebody who borders the property, you say, hey, we can really feel better about this development, even though you're fully entitled to develop your property, even though whatever you decide, like if you really want to hear us out, if this little buffer stayed here, we'd really like it. So if the builder's willing to leave them, and the city's willing to waive it where they don't have to come down, can we all come together and make something like this happen?
Right.
So it helps. Like there's the middle. Right?
Yep.
It doesn't have to be so polarizing. We don't have to be here or here. And this is just all. I mean, this is politics, right? We're not going into the political thing, but here's the example on this neighborhood that happened, which we did not talk about last time. Right? And so we got something fresh. So where you have this side and this side, right? And it's like, we're not going to not build the project. They're not going to not do it. They're not going to not take down any trees. And we're not going to just tell you we're bulldozing wherever we want because it's our property and you could just be quiet. Where's the middle ground? And that's what we found. That was a really unique situation, and I was the most invested. I don't go to everybody's community meetings to go see what they're talking about with the developer. I just leave it up to the neighborhood and the developer to talk about it, for people to represent their opinions, and for us to get presented with it, and then make a good decision for the city of Leander. And so typically it's like that, but that one was more. You were very personally involved, and so was I.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it was a good example.
And it is. I mean, it's and literally, it's a tree line in the middle of the two properties.
It really is.
So it's the middle ground, and it's almost symbolic of what
there
happened.
We should have done this there.
Yeah.
We should call this the middle ground.
Yeah, we should call it. Today's episode will be called the middle ground.
What was this, podcast or YouTube series?
It's a YouTube channel. It's a Facebook.
Coming next, the middle ground.
The middle ground. Right. I like that. I like that.
We'll be
I
out
may
between
use that.
Yeah, you can have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, well, I think that's pretty much what we had kind of talked about the last time, right? Yeah. So I appreciate you doing it again.
You bet.
Thanks so much for taking a little bit out of your time on a Saturday. Okay, so there's stuff that he could be doing.
Don't tell my bosses that right now.
Well, okay, I'll edit that. I'll edit that part out.
It's okay. I can't sell homes. I can't sell any more homes till next month anyway. So
okay, so there
we're
you
good.
go. There you go. So I got lucky.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
All of you out there, thank you for subscribing, and please get out there, hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and keep your eyes open and your ears, because in about a week, I'm going to take all the audio and I'm going to start a separate audio podcast as well. So we're going to have 3 different ways to be able to lean in, Leander, and I hope you join us then. Thanks so much.
See you in the middle ground.
The middle ground, yeah. There'll be an episode about the middle ground. Trust me, it's coming.
All right, thank you.